Hola, buenas noches. Good afternoon, good evening. This is Abelardo de la Peña Jr. welcoming you to En Casa con la Plaza. I'm the marketing director of La Plaza de Cultura y Artes, located in downtown LA, and we've been doing these En Casa con la Plaza sessions now since April. This is our 101st session. This is our way of fulfilling our mission of honoring the past, inspiring the future, and recognizing the enduring cultural influence of Mexican Americans, and all Latinas and Latinos in LA through our exhibitions, our programming, educational experiences, and more. And now we're doing it virtually, of course. If you're on Zoom, please use the comment section to let us know where you're viewing from. Use the Q&A feature to ask questions. We may take questions during the session. We may take them afterwards. On Facebook, please make comments, ask questions. You know how to start a watch party, so please do it. Share this with your friends. Everybody, let us know where you're viewing from. Our sponsors today are SoCal Gas and California Humanities. Very special program today. We're nearing the holidays. I know we feel it in the air. And with us is a writer, a broadcast journalist, a columnist, an author, Yolanda Nava. She's an Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalist, columnist, and author. She's appeared on CBS, NBC, PBS, and cable TV stations in LA, Sacramento, and nationwide. But today we're going to talk about something that she authored a few years back, the award-winning book of Latino virtues called It's All in the Frijoles. 100 famous Latinos share real-life stories, time-tested dichos, favorite folktales, and inspiring words of wisdom. Yolanda Nava, please join us.
Well, thank you so much, Abelardo. It's a pleasure and a delight. I love being the 101st. I think that's wonderful. I start a whole new siglo, 100 of these virtual presentations. It's really great to be here with you. I was one of the founders of La Plaza de Cultura y Artes, and I love the board, the people, the center, the concept of sharing the contributions of Mexicans and Mexican Americans to the City of Angels. And I love talking about this book, so I'm delighted to be here.
Well, thank you so much. And where are you viewing from, or where are you zooming in from, Yolanda?
Well, I live in Indian Wells, near Palm Springs. And I moved out here back in 2012 when I came back to California from New Mexico and Boston. I had been away for a number of years, and I decided to come back to California, and I thought I'd do the desert because it's a beautiful place. And we used to come out here when the kids were young, and I used to come out here from the time I was 15 with friends. And so I have friends out here, and I love the lifestyle. It's very easy. I can get around. I can be very independent. I can walk across the highway by myself with an audio signal. So it's a good place to live.
Well, what we're here today, of course, is to talk about your award-winning book. And we'll talk about other things as well, of course. But we would like to announce the fact that the book has been now released as an audio version. Is that correct?
It is it's a digital audio version that is released by the Library of Congress Talking Books program. And that program is for people who are sight impaired or physically handicapped in some way. And it's a free program. They give you a machine that you can get from your local library or through Braille. And they give you the books that you want to read through. You can order them through the library or go online yourself and order them through BARD. It's a free program. And I would urge people that are listening, if you yourself don't qualify for the program, you probably have a family member that would, and you can share these. Digital audiobooks, all manner of books, Spanish and English. And Frijoles is wonderful in this digital version because the gentleman that's reading it is an immigrant from Argentina, and he has gorgeous Spanish. And of course, he has a good inflection. And the beauty I love about it is that he captures a lot of the intention in the book, in the interviews, in the stories, poems, dichos, the children's stories. And he gets the inspiration and the spirituality that's inherent in each of the 14 chapters. So I love the audio version, and I'm encouraging families to, whoever qualifies for the program can then bring the family together and share, and then talk about the virtues so that they can be shared, and celebrated and passed on, from one generation to the other. And there'll be controversy. Some of them are not easy in this culture and in this day and age.
No, you are right about that. I have the copy of the book here in my hand, and it's a wonderful. It's not quite an anthology. It's like a mix of an anthology with some firsthand experiences, with quite a few well-known people within the Latino community. I mean, I could go to any page. Edward James Olmos. We have Pat Mora, of course, Danny Villanueva, the late Danny Villanueva. And they each speak, as you say, we have 14 different virtues that we speak of. But let's go back a little bit about the origin of the book. What was it that compelled you to put all this wonderful words and dichos and stories together?
It was a long time in coming. I had at that time been writing, in addition to, I was working back in education. I was doing development for the Garfield Community Adult School around the Strengthening Family Ties program to provide adult students with parenting classes, childcare, general education to get their diplomas, parent and child time together. It was a very special program. And I could see that the students that were immigrants, adults coming in from the border, across the border, with a shirt on their back and nothing, were attending this program through the amnesty program. And we had a lot of students that came from the public housing project in East Los Angeles that were third and fourth generation Americans and had fallen through the cracks and were having a hard time and struggling. And I'm working in this program and I'm going, what is this? Why are these people who have nothing and are coming across the border, literally with a shirt on their back, having such success? They're coming to school. The wife and the husband would take turns coming to school at night so somebody could stay home with the children. Some of their children were our child care center in that program. And the adult students that had dropped out came back and were going to school, but it was, they didn't have the ganas that many of all of the immigrant students had. And, I'm working in this situation, and then my mother passed away. She had passed away actually before that happened. And when she was dying, because we had been given 6 weeks for her to live, she was diagnosed with a terminal kidney disease. And I'm taking care of her. My contract ended that year, that month. It was in April, and I was able to take care of my mother every day, which was such a blessing because it really renewed and reinforced this whole cycle of life. I'm the infant, she's taking care of me, and all of a sudden she's at the end of her life, and I had to take care of her completely, everything. And so I'm talking to her because my mom was really a very special woman. She was very spiritual. She kept a beautiful home. She worked for, every day. She supported us. My parents were divorced when I was 8. And she would carry 2 grocery bags from the Grand Central Market up a flight of 120 stairs after she got off the bus and walked 2 blocks in her high heels. And she would go up these stairs with these 2 bags, so she had muscles, she had legs. She kept in really good shape. And she's dying. And she's weak. And I want to get every bit of wisdom out of her before she passes, because I knew this was it. We knew we had 6-week diagnosis. And so I'm talking to her and I said, Bob, what's made you so strong? And she said, she paused, and I was expecting some, esoteric something. And she said, beans have made me strong. Well, it went over my head. I didn't know what the heck she was talking about. And I was disappointed. And about 8 months later, after she died, I'm making frijoles de la olla in the way that my mother made them. And she would take the beans out, she would wash them, then she'd spread them out on a tray, flatter, and she would take out the rocks and the shriveled and the discolored beans. And then it dawned on me, that's it. It was this attention to the most minuscule detail of everyday life, this seeking to have perfection in her pot of beans, because she would say one bad bean could spoil the pot. And so it was interesting. And so I worked through this educational program, and I said, there's something here. What's the difference? And I realized it was these virtues that I had been taught. I ascertained that there were 14. And so I started interviewing people, and famous Latinos. And I interviewed them, I recorded them. And then I had to do a lot of digital stuff that I didn't know how to do. So I got some help. I would download, I would, have the recordings downloaded and fed to me. And then I would edit from the download that were in my computer that were sent to me via the computer. And I called all of these contributions from these 70 famous Latinos into manageable sections that I could weave in and out of these 14 chapters.
You had, and I'm sure you still have, quite a Rolodex. Both all of you that remember Rolodexes, I'm sure you had quite a Rolodex that you were able to get a hold of so many of our important figures in all facets of professional life, entertainers, authors, actors. And how did this come about? You did have your big career in broadcast. Was this through those connections or through other means?
It was all of my life, really. I had been an activist and involved in politics, and I met my husband that way. I was married to Senator Artois, and we had 2 children together. And so some of these connections were through politics, celebrities, politics, it all works. I was a broadcast journalist. I also did a nationally syndicated television show called Latin Tempo. And for a period of time, I was a West Coast entertainment reporter for that show. And then I became the national host and producer. And so I met a lot of people through art, through the events that we used to have to go to. For example, Nosotros, I knew a lot of those people because I interviewed a lot of celebrities, a lot of actors and entertainers for Latin Tempo. And then I knew some. I mean, Art and Eddie almost went to school together. So I've known Eddie, for more years than I'd like to remember. And I'll tell you a funny story later about calling Eddie the other day, but we still talk frequently on the telephone and we stay in touch. And so it was just through my associations, my encounters with people, being a journalist, doing the Latin Tempo show, having done politics and being active in a lot of these things. You go to galas and all these celebrities are there. And so I got to know them. And I also did my due diligence as a journalist. I would call SAG-AFTRA if I couldn't get a hold of somebody. I'd say, how do I reach them? Well, it's their manager, their agent, whoever it was. And I would call, I'd write a letter, I would call, follow up with a call. And I'm really good at cold calling. And so I was able to secure the interviews. Everybody said yes. Nobody said no to me. People that didn't know me said yes. Isabel Allende was one of the first people that said yes. And I didn't have a contract at that time.
No, well, and in fact, Isabel Allende, on your website, yolandanava.com, you should check it out after the show, of course. Our audience, our In Casa audience, check it out. But you do have a very extensive reel of from your early broadcast days up to when you had your interview show, and Isabel Allende is featured on your reel. So who do you think was your biggest get? The person who you really wanted to reach out to and that did in fact respond positively?
Well, I wanted Isabel Allende because she was going to be the first. She was in the first chapter, and I wanted Isabel Allende. I wanted Hector Elizondo. Everybody that I knew, some people personally, I knew of them. I was familiar with them, their work, and other people I heard about, and I acknowledged that they were somebody that I should have in the book, and I would reach out. And everybody I reached out to said yes immediately. In fact, it's interesting with Hector Elizondo. I did not know him. I'd never met him. And went through his manager, and he calls me back and we talk, and we set an appointment to have lunch. He invited me to lunch in Beverly Hills, and he paid for the lunch. I was going to do it, but he was a gentleman and he took care of it. We had the best time. And he immediately said yes. He got the idea immediately. And he contributed some lovely stories that are very relevant, in today's world, when you have to say no to some things and yes to others. So everybody got the idea that it was something that was necessary, they could appreciate it. And to the latter, Abelardo, each of us had basically learned the virtues in the same way, with similar stories, with the Dichos that some people recalled and spot out. And I put Dichos at the end of each chapter so that everybody can look at them. They're in Spanish and they're in English, which makes it wonderful. It's a good learning tool too. And so it was just a beautiful response that everybody inherently knew was important, because we have a beautiful culture and we often don't appreciate our culture in this country because this country doesn't always appreciate us. And so everybody I talked to that I wanted in the book immediately knew that these things had to be shared, these principles, these building blocks of character, I call them, that are the virtues that are inherent in our culture, needed to be shared.
Now you have in the book and in the audio book as well, the audio digital book, 14 in total, 14 virtues.
Yes.
I'm just gonna go ahead and just state a few: responsibility, respect, hard work, loyalty, faith, honesty, courage, and a few more. Now, when you receive the contributions by all these luminaries, did you have, or did they have a virtue in mind, or
No.
did you match it by what they contributed to the virtue that you wanted to call out?
We had general conversations, and then through those conversations, I kind of, intuitively felt them out, or they responded immediately, say, oh, I remember Uncle so-and-so taught me this, or my grandfather taught me that, And so then I did about an hour on each, with each person, 45 minutes to an hour with each person on these little micro, actually not mini, but micro cassettes. And at first I was trying to do the foot pedal and do all this to translate it, transcribe it into, my computer myself. I finally said, I can't do this. It'll take me forever. So I took it to somebody in Burbank that was near the After SAG theater there. I found a lady there that transcribed everything. And then she sent it to me via email, and I downloaded it into my computer. And from there, I put the interviews into documents, and then I would, whatever I was I started weaving through and see what felt like it belonged to the right place. I have to tell you that this book came through me. As a writer, I believe that we are given a gift. Mine happens to be writing and journalism and probably speaking. I talk too much, but there was a lot of intuitive circumstances that took place. For example, I would do the interviews with people and maybe they would mention a book, or I'd go to the library to research the children's stories or lullabies or the poetry that I wanted to include, or something that literature. And I'd go literally to the Pasadena Central Library because I was living in South Pass at the time. And I would be wandering through the stacks, and I love libraries. I mean, I've gone to UCLA, I've gone to graduate school. I love libraries. And so I'd be reaching for these books, because they have all these numbers and everything else that's there. And I would touch something, and I didn't know which one to pick, but I'd touch a book and maybe something next to it would fall on the floor, open up to something, and I'd look down and there it was, something I needed for the faith chapter, a poem or something. So there was a lot of magic that occurred while I was writing that book. It's happened also with my new book that, we could talk about a little later, but the experience of doing this was wonderful, because now when I listen to it through this digital audio version, I love it. And it's even more relevant today in 2020 than it was when it was published, because of all the ugly talk, anti-Mexican talk that has taken place over the last 5 years. And that's painful. And when I speak to college students, they talk about that. But the book is very relevant. And I listen to these poems and I go, wow. And I listen to these stories. I called up Eddie the other day. I said, you ought to reread the book. Look at what you shared for your, the faith chapter. And Moctezuma and Esparza and I are compadres. And so, we talk periodically as well. But I just reread his story. And the poetry is just so lovely. And people that I wasn't as familiar with, and I go back and I read their story and I go, wow, I really captured the essence of these virtues.
Well, we're speaking of Edward James Olmos. Of course, we can't go through all 14 of the virtues this evening. One question before I go on to the next. In the audio digital book, is the complete volume part of this project?
The entire book is a digital audio book under the Talking Books program, and people can contact Braille Institute in wherever they are, or their library, Talking Book Library for the Blind, and they can sign up for the machine and be able to get my book and any other book that they, many books are available, thousands of books are available through the Library of Congress.
And do you know how, as far as the length of the book, how long is it in hours and minutes? Are you aware of that?
I don't remember off the top of my head because I've never paid attention to it. It's not that long. The book is 280 pages maybe, and then it has index, and it has, maybe it has less than 280. It has index, and in each of the contributors, I do a short bio on them at the end of the book, so you can really learn about who these people are if you're not familiar with them. It's really a wonderful book. And then the index gives you page references, cross references. It's really a book that should be part of everybody's library, and it should actually be used in schools. And I have to work on that. I didn't have the time way back when to do that. And I didn't make it through one pass through the California, whatever, textbook, whatever it is. And I never took the time after because I was working and I just didn't have the time.
All right. Well, right now we have a time to delve into one of the stories on the faith, on the virtue of faith. And could you tell us why, of course, faith is one of the greatest of virtues. Why did you choose it, and what's your interpretation of that virtue, please?
Well, the top 5 virtues of the 14 are responsibility, respect, loyalty, hard work, and faith. Those are the top 5. And then we end with what is it? Fortitude and justice and
you have
chastity and caridad. I have to think because I had chastity as the last chapter, and that's another story. But I end with caridad.
But and you're right about that. And that we talked about me reading a selection from about charity, which is the chapter right before chastity. I went a little too far and I started reading the chastity, and I said, I don't know about this one, but we'll go back to that later.
Okay, let's go back to faith. Why did I choose? Because faith is the pinnacle of our society and culture. And in the Hispanic Latino culture, we are a people who love God, whether we're Christian or we practice indigenous religions, whether we are Jewish, whether we are Muslim, whether we are just spiritual seekers. Spirituality is inherent in our culture, and it comes not only from Spain. You have all these saints and Saint Teresa and everybody else, Saint John of the Cross, and all these wonderful Spanish writers, but the indigenous cultures of the Americas had a very profound spirituality, and many of the early priests, tried to capture some of that, and some of that was preserved because the priests were so impressed, I guess is a understatement. They were blown away by the faith practices, the belief systems, the spirituality of the indigenous people of the Americas. So you blend the two cultures together, and what I did, when I received my award from the International Latino Book Award, at Book Expo America, there was a workshop called Spanish as the Language oh God, now I'm forgetting what the critical word is. Oh, it was a very powerful word, but it's a very spiritual language. It's something about spirituality, and I'm forgetting the phrase right now. But that's inherent. Spirituality is inherent in the Spanish language, and so you bring that and you blend it with the indigenous cultures, and I have poetry from the Aztecs and other poetry from South American indigenous peoples in the book. It's there. It's inherent. It's part of who we are. And I think for me, and my mother taught me this, I was raised as a Protestant in a religion that was founded by a woman, Mary Baker Eddy. And I learned that, God is love and all things are possible through those who love God, and desire is prayer, and just so many different concepts that have, while I didn't understand them as a child, when my mother was teaching me these things, I also learned them in Sunday school. As I grew up and I started studying different religions, I've gone through them all. I've realized that what I was given through my culture and through my mother's Sunday school teaching, through the teachings I had in Sunday school, very, very solid spiritual principles, not dogma, not religion, but spirituality. And the book is filled with spirituality. If you listen to the stories by everybody, it's all uplifting, and inspiration is taking in spirit. And it's really important.
Yeah, in this chapter of faith, you start off with how people came to be, a story from the Mayan people of Guatemala, followed with a short passage by Lalo Guerrero, father of Chicano music, as we know, but also father of Dan Guerrero, I'm sure who has his bi-weekly program here at En Casa con la Plaza. But then the one I'm going to select here is by Edward James Olmos, the one that you spoke of, that you had the conversation with, actor. I'm not going to try to sound like Eddie James Olmos, but in and out of the pachucada. But here goes. Prayer was an important part of my upbringing. My grandparents were American Baptists. My great-grandfather was the person who opened the church and took care of the church and the altar and the baptismal bath. He took care of the entire church. I distinctly remember they prayed out loud on their knees for hours, both in the morning and at night, every single day, 7 days a week. It was an integral part of our life. They would do prayers that were like poetry, all done from the heart, all done in different communication with God, in direct communication with God. They would switch off verses. One would talk for maybe 4, 5, or 10 minutes. Then the other one would carry it forward and elevate it to the highest level of commitment and understanding. It was, now that I reflect on it, probably one of the most extraordinary environments I could have been raised in. It was an entire involvement with prayer. I've never discussed this with anyone, that prayer was the centerpiece of where I came from and the way I was brought up. I was also exposed to many spiritual traditions. There was the Baptist faith of my great-grandparents, augmented by both the Catholic philosophy that my father brought into the home and by the Jewish philosophy that my mother exposed us to. Then there were the Jehovah's Witnesses that I was exposed to as they stood on the corner handing out their publications at Watchtower, or running into the Mormons who used to come by our home asking if anyone had passed away. They did this so they could baptize the dead person's soul into the Mormon church. I've also learned from Buddhism that they believe in all that is good and all that makes us what we should be. I continue to use spirituality as the central point of my existence. Spiritual energy is the source of all life, and spirituality is as essential for people as food. It is a vital form of nourishment. It's as necessary as putting gasoline into your car. It helps you remain balanced and provides you with the strength to go on forward and move forward. We are surrounded by many good things, but we are also bombarded by negative and destructive energy, which can knock us off balance unless we are grounded spiritually. Spirituality keeps you balanced and keeps you humble because it reminds you that we are part of a larger whole. For me, it is key.
Yeah, it's very true. I think I could, he said it for me too. I believe the same kind of I believe the same kind of things. It is the cornerstone of our culture, and it is essential. And I think even I remember now the term, the workshop that they had, the seminar that they had at the Book Expo America, and it's Spanish is the language of thought. And you combine that with spirituality, thoughts are things, thoughts move us forward. What we think is what we get. I mean, that's modern day, but thought and thinking is very important, and our lives are based on how we think and what we think. But to go back to Eddie's, what he says is so true, and he reflects much of what you find in the faith chapter, because it seems that our luminaries had similar openness to spirituality, and had different ways of observing and of worshiping and of practicing. And it's just fascinating to me that there's this kind of a meeting point in terms of how people perceive things. And there's some gorgeous poetry in there. I did one that's anonymous in the faith chapter that is a really lovely poem. And then I loved Jaime Sabinas's poem, but he's playing with it. He was an agnostic, if not an atheist. Most Mexican intellectuals, left the church, but he had cancer in his latter years, and as he was dying, he regained his faith in God. And so he writes this wonderful poem, "Me encanta Dios," which I really love. It's very playful. But faith is the cornerstone, Abelardo. And today, more than ever, I've always said when I've given talks that I always, bridge spirituality and whatever politics and everything else that's going on. But this idea that we move our lives forward through how we think and what we think. And it's just critical that we continue to explore these dimensions of spirituality and to develop some kind of a spiritual practice. And today, the word inspiration, to inspire is to take in, and inspiration is to take in inspiration, to take in spirit. Think about it. I love to play with words. Inspiration, taking in spirit. And so at this time, and I was just thinking about this, was it last night or this morning? With COVID, what is the problem? The problem is the lung. People can't breathe. And in this day and age, we often don't breathe. Just take in a deep breath, take in 10 deep breaths, and you're going to feel something open up in yourself. And so with COVID, it's interesting that it's affecting the lung, which is the difficulty in breathing. It's not, and respiration isn't what is needed. You could shut down respiration, but taking in spirit opens everything up. And I remember, I just always would, my mother would always talk about my taking in spirit. And I say now, when you meditate, you breathe. And some meditations are just a form of breathing. But when we do that, we're healing ourselves, we're making ourselves whole, and we're putting ourselves in touch with something much larger than ourselves.
And how are you keeping the faith yourself, Yolanda, during these times?
I feel pain, compassion for all that are suffering, and certainly the Latino population is suffering at greater levels, along with African Americans, Black people, and that is, I feel that, and I would like to change that. I'd like to see that change immediately, and I think it will very, very soon. But personally, I chose to look at COVID and the quarantine and sequestration and all the rest of it as an opportunity. And that opportunity was to choose to look at it as a writer's retreat. And I practically rewrote my whole book that's coming out next March this year. And so for me, it became very positive, because every morning I would get up, I decided instead of working in my bedroom, I cleared the whole dining table off. I put my stand there, I put my computer there, I have my OK Google here so I can do reference things. I put my music on. I can look across the room. You know, I know that I have paintings. I know I have an outdoor area, even though I can't see them. And I just wrote, edited. I turned in the manuscript in the end of June, beginning of July. And then, you know, publisher and I go back and forth. And I just submitted the last few sentences of a couple of things I wanted to change in the book. And the book is going to be published March the 3rd, 2021, in time for Women's History Month. So I chose to make it an opportunity. And I haven't felt any discomfort. I've been able to find toilet paper. I've had everything I need. At first, friends were bringing me some stuff because they didn't want me, you know, going out. And I go across the market to the market. I walk over there, or take a ride over there, and get my groceries, run my errands in the shopping center, you know, get my groceries and have a ride and come back home. So I know it's essential, and I avoid groups. And my children and I aren't traveling for Thanksgiving or Christmas. And just going to be quiet, and also use this time to take in spirit. And I think a lot of people are discovering that they're suffering so much that they have to reach out for something beyond themselves. So breathe deeply, take in spirit, read inspirational literature, read the Frijoles. You got enough spirit in that book to take you through a lifetime.
That's great advice. Great advice. Thank you so much. Well, the second virtue that we're going to just delve on a little bit is charity. It's you have it at towards the end of the book before chastity, and I'm just looking at the table of contents. Well, it's before chastity, but we have charity.
That is the last chapter. That is the last chapter. Yeah.
You have well, okay. So why don't you tell us why you chose and the importance of charity? You know, myself being of a family of Roman Catholics, having gone to parochial school, Catholic school, of course, it was the three virtues: faith, hope, and charity.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how has that manifested in your life? And tell us your feelings about it now.
Well, caridad is love. It's charity, but it's love, caridad. And my mother was love. And the faith that she was part of was, you know, God is love. That's John. And so having love, having compassion, having a sense of taking care, we are our brothers' keepers, our brothers and sisters' keepers. That's in the Bible. Certainly premise, you know, in the Catholic religion, and all religions, we're supposed to take care of one another. Muslim faith, they take care of each other. And it's just interesting what we, you know, Buddhism, all of these great spiritual traditions, faith traditions, teach very similar concepts. They might prioritize things a little bit differently. They have maybe some different rituals, but the premises are the same. The people in the book, Christians, Jews, Muslims, love God, Allah, Yahweh, do good, be good. How hard is that? And so charity is doing for other people. It's taking care of one another. It's taking care of your family members. It's taking care of your elders. It's respecting elders. It's providing for, it's taking the food to somebody who's ill. It's all of these things that we learned. My mother used to have, she would have women friends who went through a divorce and didn't have a place to live. So they would come stay with my mother for a while. My girlfriends, when they would get divorced, they'd come to my mother and stay with my mother for a while. So she was always taking care of other people. We were always sending food and clothing to Tijuana. She was just, that was who she was. And my cousin, who did one of the eulogies at her memorial service, said, you know, Connie was love. So I grew up with that, and I like to think that I'm a loving person. I've spent my whole life not so much pursuing my own thing, although I've had a great life and a great career, and but I've always been involved in service. And it was my involvement in service when I was in my 20s, and I formed Comisión Femenil. I was one of the founders, and I was totally dedicated to my high school dropouts that I was counselor to, and then later the director of the program for the Neighborhood Youth Corps program. These were disadvantaged youth who had dropped out of school. The girls dropped out pregnant, that kind of situation. It was about service, and it was because I was involved in developing an empowerment organization, a leadership organization for Chicana, Mexican American women. I love Chicana. That's how I met Gloria Molina. We did that together. Because I was involved in that leadership organization, that gave me my opportunity to do my first television show. So it's the service, it's the giving to others, the service to others for me that has created my incredible life, my wonderful career, the organizations I've been able to serve, the political issues I've been able to impact, the California Highway Patrol Women Traffic Officer Program. We created non-gender-based criteria so that people, it was a gender-free thing. You didn't have to be 5'6", 155 pounds or 60 pounds and have a penis. Is a penis going to help you? Or a CHP officer? You're not going to beat somebody up with that. So it's defusing violence, and we changed a lot of the way that we look at law enforcement and firefighting. But all that has helped create my life the way it has been, and I've been very, very blessed. Even when I've gone through the real hard times, and I've gone through several, losing sight was probably the most difficult, the most challenging. But each time I have been provided for, spiritually, materially, through friends, through angels that I meet on the street. That's love, that's compassion, that's guiding God.
Wow. So as you've been charitable, giving service, so has other people, other organizations been charitable to you. So it what goes around comes around, basically.
Yeah, it goes around and comes around, and it's beautiful. Even now, one of the things I do love to do, I like to go out and do my own shopping, because I have high school students and college students at the market where I shop, the markets where I shop, and I love coaching them. So I'm still doing my service, and I'm giving to these young people because I try to figure out what they're interested in. I always ask them, are you in college, are you in high school, what are you studying, what do you want to do, blah, blah, blah. And I'm always trying to, nourish them, encourage them. And if I pick up a spark of brilliance, which some of them have something very special, I tell them that. I said, you're very bright. You see things in a very unique way that's intelligent. And, they're like 17 and, or they're 21. And it's just interesting. And so I'm still doing it. I'm a social worker at heart, It's I love to give to people, especially strangers that I meet on the street, and they've given to me. I had one guy come up to me. I got disoriented. I was walking over across the highway. I was walking over to the Vaughn's Market, and I got disoriented. And so he offered to help me. And so we were talking. I told him I walked across every week to keep my independent skills up. And he turned out to be a Latino preacher of some kind, some religion. He says, "May I pray for you?" And I said, "Yes." He says, "May I put my hand on your shoulder?" I said, "Yes." And so, he prays for me, and then we're walking. He says, "Can I walk into the market?" I said, "Yeah." And so we walk together, and I hear this flip-flop on his feet. I said, "Are you wearing chanclas?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "Why are you wearing chanclas?" He said, "Well, I'm just going to go see my grandmother." I said, "You wear shoes to go see your grandmother?" It was so funny, but he was so precious and he was so loving. And I get that kind of treatment with, 99 and 9/10% of the people that I encounter. They help me. If I stand there looking like I'm disoriented, they come up and, "May I help you? May I guide you?" Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So I've always taken care of and provided for and protected, and I do the same for others.
Fantastic. Well, we're gonna read one of the stories here in the charity section. It's by poet Gary Soto. Okay. Charity comes from wanting to help. And if I locate its source inside me, I think of when I was a third grader at St. John's Catholic School in Fresno. My father had died a couple of years before. and being left alone was terrifying. Also worrisome for me was the poverty that was real. I remember walking home from school, holy in my little Catholic soul, and seeing a kid approaching from the opposite direction down a leaf-strewn street. I knew it was October from the way the light slanted through the nearly bare trees. I sensed a change in the climate and sensed that I could be looking at myself when I saw that he wore socks with heels completely ripped. In fact, I knew I was looking at myself, me with my own torn socks and cardboard in the soles of my shoes. I was sneaky because I figured out a way of hiding my plight by tugging my socks down into my shoes so that the holes were invisible except to me and my own little ego. But the kid coming toward me, well, he wasn't nearly as bright. His poverty was so evident. The holes rode way up high on the backs of his heels. Although small, not earth-shattering, he was a miserable sight. I was looking at myself, except that kid was going one way and I the other. We call that empathy, and empathy is what kickstarts charity. Charity is not just an emotional response, but an action. It's responding to the least of our brothers and sisters, as the Bible says. I was also on charity's needy end. I ran away from an ugly home situation when I was 17 and lived on the streets for a while before renting a room in a house that was similar to the one from which I had escaped. I was working at a tire factory in Burbank. The work was difficult, nearly impossible, even for a young man like me, hard in muscle and with a lot of youthful energy in my legs. I used to walk 6 miles home each day. While I tried to hitchhike, no one would give me a ride because I was completely covered with black soot from the tires. From a distance, I probably resembled a coal miner, black around the eyes with my long hair spiked up from the dust, which was like eraser rubbings from a pencil. I was a sight to behold. I wasn't looking for charity, but my God, a ride partway home wasn't asking much. In my 8 weeks, no one ever offered help except one woman, a Mexicana, of course, who stopped her car, though she was going in the opposite direction. She ran across the street to give me $1 for bus fare. I raised my hand to fend off the money, but not her act of charity. She begged me to take it, but I didn't, which, as I look back, was the wrong response. I should have taken that $1 in order for her to complete her act of charity. I still marvel over her selfless gesture. That was many years ago, and since then I have demonstrated that some may see charity. My wife and I tithe 10% of what we earn towards the Chicano arts and some educational programs. Charity is an unselfish act. Yes, it's a conscious act, but when you give in money, time, or even wisdom, your charity goes out to others. And even though you may never see your gifts again, they circle around for everyone's good.
Yeah, that cycle of giving and receiving. In the training program I went through in Colorado, you weren't supposed to ask for help or receive it. It was really ugly. Don't touch me. And I knew that wasn't my growth. My growth was to be able to, receive help, to be able to ask for help and to be able to receive it. And so when people, even though I can do something myself, if somebody offers to do something, they want to walk me from here to there, I'd love that, So I received it. So I allowed them to give. And it's a very interesting thing. The vendors at the shopping center where I shop, and I have, 5 places that I go to there, one will walk me to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. Now I can do it by myself on the one sidewalk. I have to crossing the parking lot, I need help, but I can do it, but I always receive it. And we have so much fun kibitzing and talking when we go from one place to the other, because we have a few more minutes than when we're doing the business transactions. And it's really part of my weekly routine. I give to them, they give to me, and it really is lovely. And that kind of sharing is very important in our lives. We really do need to take care of each other.
Well, you've definitely given to the community with your work in broadcasting. Of course, it's keeping people informed, but also in your various board activities. As a founding member of La Plaza de Cultura y Artes board, you gave a lot. I know it was a struggle, me not being there, but I know it was a struggle in the beginning, but managed to pull through. And now, almost 10 years later, we're still at the forefront of one of the most forward-thinking Latino or any institutions of its kind here in Los Angeles. And thanks to people like you. and who was a recipient a couple years back of what we call our Icon Award at La Plaza at our gala back in, I believe it was 2018.
Yes.
Along with when we honored Monica Lozano, the Familia Lozano of La Opinión fame, but also all the pioneering broadcasters who came up from around in the 70s and 80s, of which you were one of the pioneers.
I was the first woman, the first Mexican-American woman to appear on a network affiliate in Los Angeles. And that's why I got it. I was the only woman at that time. The guys that were at the table, that were the pioneers, were all the guys. I was the only woman. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Funny. That was a lovely affair. Yeah, that was lovely. That was lovely. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, we have a couple comments here. Patricia Gonzalez Garza says, good evening. I'm watching from Rosemead, California. I'm excited to hear about the book. Thank you. So please tell us about your forthcoming book, Yolanda.
Well, the new book is called Through the Dark. And it's a story about how you get through a cataclysmic, life-changing, traumatic event and come to thrive. And I lost sight back in 2009. Suddenly, within a matter of 3.5 weeks, I went from sighted to blind. And I was very sick. I was dying. And I used my spiritual tools. And I got through the hospital, damn good medicine and prayer. Got me, I lived through that. And I have been thriving ever since, because I went to work writing a book and went back to, I was working with Plaza, and I have to thank Plaza, La Plaza, because I continued to, come into the meetings. And that, gave me ganas, it gave me something to do at home, what I could do on the telephone, raising money and doing the different things that we had to do. And I would come to the board meetings blind. I scared everybody half to death when they first saw me. I didn't realize how sick I was. And Gloria called one day after a meeting. She says, "Are you all right?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." Well, I found out 2 days later I'd lost 40 pounds and I was dying. So it's interesting. But Through the Dark is a book that takes you through all the steps that I went through to go through the changes to move through a very traumatic event and to be able to thrive. I feel blessed. I'm at the point where I hate to say this, but it's been a blessing to lose my sight. And I've been, so aware and grown so much. And now I started writing the book within 6 months of getting out of the hospital, because I wanted to help other people go through these traumatic times. And look what we've gone through in this last, several months, 9 months. And so the same principles that I use, if you read the book, it's going to come out next March, and I'm encouraging people to pre-order the book after January 3rd, to look at what I did as kind of a, pathfinder, to identify some of the things we need to do and can do. If I could do it, everybody can do it. You can do it. And it's something that we can do. And these tools are things that you can learn and use, the virtues and this Through the Dark and the experiences that I share there. How to go through this is how we get through this COVID, and how we move into the 2021, and how we move into a different time. And each of us is the change that has to happen. And our own personal growth is so vital, and our spiritual growth is really what's being called for right now to take in spirit.
Well, that's the right frame of mind to be in during these times. We have Marcia Hobbs.
Marcia.
Most interesting. Many years ago, Yolanda and I were sorority sisters, and I'm so proud of her this evening. So greetings from Marcia.
Oh, thank you, Marcia. Thank you so much. Yeah, we were sorority sisters at UCLA. She was, I think, a couple of years younger than me. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And we are reconnecting because she's moved out here to the desert, and we have to get together, Marcia, when we can. We're in a women's organization together. So that's been interesting that we reconnected there. And I was living out of town for the last, 20 years, but now we're in the same city. So it's interesting. Yeah.
All right. Well, Carmen Arredondo says hello. Caro Rivera is watching from Elk Grove. Olivia Wilkins is watching from Lucerne Valley, California. So we have a little bit of an audience here. we're going to be wrapping it up here, Yolanda, but you know, personally, you're such an inspiration.
Oh, thank you.
You know, with all the professional work that you've done, but continuing to give and making the best out of the situations in which you find yourself in. Not only making the best of it, I mean, just pushing it forward and really being extremely inspirational. We have here the book. I have it in my hands. It's all in the Frijoles, 100 famous Latinos share real life stories, time-tested dichos, favorite folktales, and inspiring words of wisdom, award-winning. Is this still in print? Can people still purchase the book, Yolanda?
They can purchase the book. They have used books. It's not being printed anymore. They stopped that in 2012, but it is available electronically on Kindle, and it can be picked up on Amazon.
Okay, there you go. You could get it on Kindle. And also, I picked up my borrowed copy from the South Pasadena Library. And I understand you lived in South Pasadena for a while?
I did, but it's available. It should be in all public libraries. It was distributed to all public libraries.
All right,
so it
good.
should be available everywhere.
Yes, this one is in their Latino cultural collection donated by Vecinos de South Pasadena.
Yeah.
With that, any last words, Yolanda?
Well, I think we're in the season of light and love. We were talking about love earlier, and faith. It's a holy season. We're celebrating the Jewish holidays right now, and that is a season of light. And isn't it interesting that we're calling forth the light? So I would just ask everybody to take in a deep breath and just think about love and healing in the world and peace on earth and goodwill to women and men, and just see what we want to have coming into our life individually, as families, as a country, as a globe, and visualize that and know that it is possible, and we are each the action steps that need to be made to bring about a world of light and love, and a world that works for everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
Thank you. Very inspirational, very interesting. Pick up the book, find it at your library, order it on Kindle. We look forward to your next book. We'll have to have you back on when that's published. Thank you, all of you that joined us in Casa con la Plaza this evening. We're nearing the holidays, or we're in the midst of the holidays. You probably see the little twinkle lights right behind me here. Coming up this Friday on En Casa con la Plaza is our last session of 2020. And it's a great one. We have Dan Guerrero Happy Hour. And he's going to bring with him a couple guests. Luis Perez, the songwriter, percussionist, guitarist with LA's own Los Lobos, will be talking about the holidays. But then we also have, as a special guest, the great Linda Ronstadt joining in with a holiday greeting for all of us. So if you didn't catch the entire program, we're recording it. It'll be posted on our YouTube page at La Plaza LA, on our Facebook page at La Plaza LA, and also on our website at lapca.org, where you'll find all of our En Casa de la Plaza sessions, all 101 En Casa con la Plaza sessions. Plus we have our En Familia con la Casa, En Familia con la Plaza, excuse me, which is our family workshops. We have one coming up this Saturday, premiering on YouTube, but we have about 15 of them online. Plus, if you go onto our website, we now have virtual tours of our exhibitions. So go to lapca.org, click on exhibitions, and though we can't be walking through the museum's galleries, you could do it online through your smartphone, through your computer, wherever you're at. So muchas gracias de nuevo. Yolanda, let's see, Carol Sose King says, Yolanda, that is outstanding, great program. And all of you, thank you so much. Happy holidays, Feliz Navidad, Próspero Año Nuevo. Nos vemos pronto. Buenas noches. Good night, Yolanda.
Good night. Gracias.